So hi, I'm Peter Haddock, and the tables have been turned today because I am taking Mark Anthony live in my Zoom call today. Now, Mark is the live king, has done so many of these, started in the lockdown period, but is now taking it to new levels. And I've collaborated with Mark on Hillhead Almost Live, and now he's going to shine a light, like I am, on Demolition Technology, because actually Mark's worked in the demolition industry for over 30 years. Mark, what's happening and how's this come about? And tell me what's going to be live at Demolition Technology and when is it going to happen?
Well, the date for your diary is the 24th of September. It'll be 6 o'clock in the evening, UK time. And the thinking behind Demolition Technology is pretty much the same as the thinking behind the Hillhead Almost Live that you did with myself and with Nick Drew as well. And really, it's trying to provide construction and demolition companies with the ability to actually showcase their wares while obviously we can't have exhibitions. But I also think it's an opportunity for the demolition industry to get a firmer grip on some of the technology that's out there, because it doesn't seem to trickle down to demolition quite as quickly as it does to construction. You and I obviously were in ConExpo in Las Vegas shortly before the world went completely mad. And we saw a lot of technology, but all of it seemed to be targeted primarily at construction. Now, I know that's the big numbers. Construction is much bigger than demolition, but some of the challenges, or all of the challenges that demolition faces, are exactly the same as construction. So technology has the ability to advance the industry. I mean, one of the things that always occurs to me is when you're looking at construction and demolition equipment, it improves now. I wouldn't say any machine is perfect, but we're now at a point where we're improving through evolution. So each new iteration of machine is an evolution of what went before. Technology gives us the opportunity for revolution, to make some really massive leaps in efficiency, productivity, and perhaps most importantly of all, safety. So that's the theory behind Demolition Technology 2020.
Well, I think that's really important, Mark, because what I see in the industry is we've had machine control for a long time, but not quite had that working in demolition. We've had a lot of other sort of training elements, and we've had a lot of simulators, but not quite tagged up for the demolition industry. So the demolition industry is, I guess, has been a bit forgotten with some of this, because it is seen as a niche market. Yet demolition is the first machines on site, and they can make the first technology difference, the build back better difference. So what are the types of things people can expect you to be talking about? Not forgetting safety, of course, and the technologies behind that.
Well, I mean, just picking up on your point there, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that the point that I want to drive home, and I'm hoping that Demolition Technology will drive home as well, is the fact that demolition companies and demolition organizations are very, very quick to seize upon change. You know, they are, anybody offering a technological solution that will benefit the demolition industry, they're pushing on an open door. Demolition has a reputation. You're only going to look at things like the robotic demolition from the likes of Brock and more recently the ES Manufacturing's Akula range. You know, we're seizing upon things like robotics, possibly ahead of our friends in construction. So you know, we are very, very open to technology. And just looking at the content, I mean, I've got a very brief list here. I mean, some of the content, we've got things like worker exoskeletons. So allowing a machine, a human-mounted machine, to take the weight of, be it a power tool, whatever it might be, so you're making it safer and less inclined to cause injury through strain and that kind of thing. Remote operation. You know, you and I have seen remote operation up close and personal. That exists now. You know, I was talking to somebody recently. You know, if you're looking at, we tend to look at demolition as, you know, an 8 or a 10-hour day. If you were right up against it, there's nothing to stop you putting, let's say, a British team on a remote control system to do the first 8 hours, and then when they finish, we'll get an American team to pick up where they left off, and when they finish, the Australians kick in, and then the English. You could literally work around the clock with very, very skilled people using exactly the same machines from wherever they are in the world.
And we've seen that happen, haven't we, Mark? We've seen that in ConExpo demonstrated. We've seen these remote control stations. But what you're talking about there, and I want to pick up on it very briefly, is it takes a trained operator to do that. It takes a highly skilled operator to do that. So we mustn't forget that element, that technology is here to actually help and guide people wherever they are in the world, like you say, but you still need that knowledge, don't you? Particularly in demolition, very dangerous industry, isn't it?
It certainly is. I mean, certainly through what I write on demolitionnews.com and through our Instagram profile, there is a slight resistance, I think, among operators to technology, because everybody thinks it's going to, a robot's going to come along and take their job. That would be so difficult in the demolition industry, because you're just dealing with so many variables. So yes, you will always need that human element, or at least for the foreseeable future. And when you look at some of the technology we're featuring, things like collision avoidance. Well, collision avoidance, you wouldn't really worry about that if you didn't have a human involved. You could just put sensors on machines and they'd avoid each other. We're talking about wearable technology, particularly in sort of post-COVID, so we know we're all 2 meters apart. But also when you've got people working alone, possibly in a remote location, if they stop moving for a time, an alert is sounded. All of that is based around a human being. It's not a case of let's get men out of the way and move on to machines, because that's a long way off as yet, I think.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that we've got to recognise is what technology allows us to do is it allows us to bring those people together in a much more collaborative way. So, for example, we've always seen that the disconnect between the engineer that's designing and even designing the demolition process to the actual operator that's doing it. So, when you're looking at, say, something like 3D machine control, that's a guidance to make sure you're hitting grade. Well, we need versions of that that's a guidance to make sure you're taking down a building where it's been structurally sound, but you're taking it down in the levels that have been engineered to make sure that that's coming down safely as well. It's the same process as you're grading a trench. Perhaps it's more complicated, but as you're grading the way in which you take down a building or a structure, isn't it?
I think one of the most exciting bits of tech that I've seen in relation to demolition is taking like a heads-up display. So a demolition team will be briefed in the morning of what their specific tasks are. At some point in the dim and distant past, somebody will have created maybe a 3D animation or a sequence of works. But that sequence of works is explained in a toolbox talk, and then the guys go out on site and they're looking at a blank building or a pile of rubble or whatever it might be. By using something like the HoloLens that I think Trimble have been involved in and Microsoft have been involved in, you can actually put a hard hat on a guy with a screen and a heads-up display. So everything that you talked about in that toolbox talk is now visually available on his face, and it's not just randomized information. When he looks at a column, he knows which column that is, what order that needs to come down in, whether it's to be left alone through facade retention, whatever it might be. He's got that information literally in front of his face 24/7 if he needs it. And I think that's really exciting. Unfortunately, we do have a few accidents in construction and demolition. If we could do one thing, wave one magic wand, it would be to get rid of accidents. And I think by being able to see exactly what the toolbox talk has explained and the sequence of works that's been engineered, to see that visually, that has got to be a contribution to safety, which I and the rest of the industry would welcome.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely right, Mark, because I think when we're talking about technology, for the number one thing for me is this going to make the task at hand safer to be performed, but is it going to make it safer for the people that are involved in that project? So can we take people away from the face? Can we have people that are properly guarded in equipment? Can we have that design integration so that people don't have a part of a building collapsing on them because they're actually not following the right guidelines? And can we actually turn around and go, hey, we can do all of this, keep people safer, but we can take that building down much more effectively, quicker, because at the end of the day, with this whole build back better scenario that the government and the industry is trying to achieve, we need things to be demolished faster and those sites to be remediated and ready to build faster, so that we can go from that planning phase to that shovel ready people on site phase much faster. And there's an opportunity for the demolition industry to do more then, Mark, isn't there? To not only demolish but make that site ready for the next structure, isn't it?
It's so very true. I mean, I often refer to the, you know, it's an old cliche, but you know, when construction catches a cold, or when construction sneezes rather, demolition will catch a cold. That's just the way it is. You know, there is that trickle down effect. And when you look at things like HS2, you know, everyone's excited about the build for HS2, but HS2 will have a knock-on effect for demolition, as does everything else. We live on an island where we have finite resources and finite space. By and large, any real construction these days will see some demolition. And you're so right in what you say about setting that standard, or setting that benchmark. You know, as you say, demolition people are the first on site. You know, they can set the standard there, be it through drone surveys that then feed into the construction phase, whether it be, you know, some sort of smart construction or connected site technology, but they will be the first contributor to that. And when you look at things like BIM and everything that goes with that, the first contribution to BIM on any major project will be demolition. You know, we are already tracing on some projects, you know, what material was taken down, was it analysed? Yes, it was. Where did it go? What can we use? What can we recycle, repurpose, or whatever it might be? All of that is analysed and checked. We are setting the standard in demolition. And it's really a case of, you've mentioned the word collaboration a few times. I think what we need is a closer collaboration between the first stage, which is demolition, and all that comes after that, because we do have the ability to set that standard. I was on a site in London, 2 years ago probably, and the demolition company had put in place a lot of vibration and noise and dust monitoring systems. And we got to talking about them. And the crazy situation was the demolition company had been required to put those in. The demolition task was done in about 16 weeks, at which point the demolition company was taking all of that away so that the piling contractor could come back and put it all back. So somebody has got to do that, you know. I mean, even if you're just talking about the emissions from the van that delivers, that's lunacy. You know, why don't we just all agree at the outset that we will put these things in place and then leave them there until the very end? Makes much more sense. So I think there's still that bit of collaboration. Probably needs a bit of tweaking, but you know, as anybody that's listened to your podcast will know, you know, collaboration is one of the key topics that you talk about, and I think we're winning the battle. We've just still got a bit more to do to win the war, you know.
And that comes down to what you're trying to achieve now by making this whole light up of demolition technology come into the industry and say, listen, people, here it is. Mark, you're enabling that conversation. That conversation has to be had between all those different layers, you know, of people that you're talking about. Because if we're going to achieve this, if we're going to support the industry and the sections of the industry that need supporting, then we've got to be able to supply the holistic approach of how we can deliver technology to make things better. And I think from my perspective, what I'm really pleased about is that we've been able to work together with the Hillhead Almost Live. You've been able to take that and really focus in your sector about something that is really, really focused on demolition technology and the adoption of it. And of course, when one sector adopts something, another sector follows. And when you adopt something altogether, guess what? You set new standards in technology, you set new standards in the way in which you can do work. And I think that's commendable. So come on, tell people when they can tune in to Demolition Technology Live.
It's 6 p.m. on the 24th of September. So it's 1 day less than a month away. So yeah, we're pulling together. We were actually filming last week, all the various bits, the inserts and everything else that's going to go in there. All of the content is starting to come together. We've still got a few bits and pieces outstanding, but it's coming together very, very well. We originally aimed for about half an hour, as we had with Hillhead Live. That's already blown out of the water. It's probably twice that, and it may go even longer than that. So if you're into demolition technology or construction equipment or construction technology, you know, you're going to have a good hour or possibly more of genuinely interesting content from across the board. You know, obviously the big names. I'm wearing a JCB hat at the moment just by fluke. I was up there last week. JCB are in there. Komatsu will be in there. But in addition to that, we've got people that are completely out of left field. You know, as I say, people that are doing exoskeletons and project management software and all the stuff that goes with it. So it really is going to be a really mixed bag. And I think it's going to be a real learning exercise. I'm very proud of what you, I, and Nick did with the Hillhead Live, but it was kind of a broad showcase, much as an exhibition would be in the traditional sense. This, I think, will be more of an educational bent. I think there's going to be probably 30 or 40 elements to this, and there is every likelihood, if you're a demolition person watching that, you'll find something. Oh, actually, that could help me with this part of my business, or this could push me down a different path. So it is going to be a really worthwhile exercise. At least I hope so.
Well, I certainly know it's going to be, Mark. So good luck with it all, and I'll be promoting it myself on my channels and tuning in like so many more people should do. Thanks very much, Mark.
Electronic